almost like being in love. Almost. How many of us live our lives with an almost consciousness? Don't raise your hands. But think about it. I think we get caught sometimes in an almost consciousness. You know, this beginning of this year, we are doing the first 4 chapters of The Science of Mind. And the thing itself, the way it works, and then today it's what it does. What it does. So I want to go to one of the quotes from this chapter, and it's this. To return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. To return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. Now, I want you to look at the operative word there. It's so funny. On the way here in the car, my son and my daughter and I were talking about, Will said something. I said, well, what's the operative word in that sentence? And he didn't know what that meant, and then Nora taught him. And she told him what operative meant and then gave an example of it. But it's interesting. The return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. What's the operative word? Sane. Sanity. To return to a simplicity that not only that makes sense. How about that? That just makes sense. A sane simplicity. So, on this stage on Friday night, we started what we call affectionately 24 hours of madness. Not sanity, but madness. And you don't know this, many of you. How many people were here for 24 hours of madness? Great, then you know. So from Friday night to 8 o'clock to today, most of us, and I was one of the writers, most of us have had maybe 3 or 4 hours sleep, especially the writers. And it was really 24 hours of incredible madness. And yet, it was incredibly sane. It was the most incredible 24 hours of madness we've ever had. The acting was exquisite. The writing was just great. Everything went so smoothly, and the madness never showed up. But I know why that happened. Because of me. Right, Sharon? Oh, I guess so. And I do mean because of me. Because when I woke up yesterday morning, I went to bed at like 3:30 and I had to get up at 6 for CPR. And then I did CPR and I realized and remembered that it's up to me to decide what my day is going to be like. So if I'm going to say to myself, oh my God, I'm in the middle of 24 hours of madness, what do you think I'm going to find? Madness everywhere. And I could have set myself to step into this theater yesterday, and just so you know, I wrote my first play. Not my first play, my first play of the weekend. I wrote a play. I started at like 9 o'clock to write it, and about 1:30 I was on page 8 of what has to be about 15, and I had written myself into a hole. Have you ever written yourself into a hole mentally in your life? Have you ever just gotten somewhere where you're just like, these characters have nowhere to go? And that's where I was. And the one character I wrote into a hole really had nowhere to go, and she's the one that I asked to come do this because I knew she was going to get a great role. And I'm writing her like this lame piece of acting to do. And so I thought to myself, I have to start over at 1:30 in the morning. I was like, I have to start over. I'll just start over. And I just stared at the page. And I just stared at the page. And then I went and laid down, and Kevin woke up for a brief second and said, good, you're finished. No, I haven't started. I was like, oh my God. And then I sat down at the table, and I got going. Ernest Holmes says, we are surrounded by a mind or intelligence that knows everything. That the potential knowledge of all things exists in this mind. And we also exist in it and may draw from it. So, there I am at 1:30 in the morning, just staring at the page. And it was my responsibility to fill it, wasn't it? No? Okay, good. I could have not done it. That would have been great. I felt that it was my responsibility to fill it. I felt that it was up to me and my immeasurable talent to fill this computer screen with brilliance, because I run the theater. I have to be brilliant. It has to be better than everybody else's, which is just such hogwash. Nothing is better than anyone else's. It may be different. It's not better. So I'm sitting there feeling the weight of the world that I had to, as the leader, write the most incredible piece of art, and it had to make sense, and it had to have a magnificent message. I am, after all, the Reverend James Mellon. So it can't just be a piece of fluff. And yet I like all things fluffy. So I'm thinking, how do I accomplish all of this at once? So the thing I had to do, and the things we all have to do, in order to go from almost to all things, is get out of the way. Thank you, Doug. Doug went, right. To get out of the way and actually let something bigger than me fill the page. To get out of the way and trust and allow for God to write what God writes through me. Yes? So that's all we ever had to do. We have to get out of the way and let God fill the page. And you know what? Today's chapter is what it does. And guess what? I can make this very simple for you. We can all get home earlier. What it does, it fills the page. If you let it. That's what God does. That's all God ever does. God is right here as me, waiting to just get out of the way, as Emerson says, get your bloated nothingness out of the way so that your incredible allness can come forth. So, that's what it does. The thing itself fills our pages of our lives with spiritual food, catered specifically to our needs. We just have to get out of the kitchen and let it make what it makes. So, I want to use the kitchen reference for a reason. Yesterday, when I got to the center, I was thinking to myself, all right, you got to eat. You're taking great care of yourself these last 6 months. You put all this weight on that you wanted. You got to eat all day. Don't forget to eat. Well, of course, I wasn't going to eat because I literally had to run everything from the time I got here through to 8 o'clock when the show started. Well, the lovely Christelle Lorraine comes up to me when I walk in the building and she says, Reverend James, my boyfriend and I are on this meal plan, and they deliver our foods to us every day. And it's organic, and it's healthy, it's great. But he had to go out of town for something, and we thought maybe you would like his food delivered to you all day. I literally almost cried. I did. And I was like, I would love that. What is it? What's on the menu? She said, it's all organic, you're going to love it. So I was literally fed all day. I had these meals just lined up all day. And anybody here, I don't want you to feel like I didn't feed you. But it starts with taking care of yourself. You have to put the thing on your face first. And so I ate. And here's the thing. I had a moment, like Doug said, you would think that with all that I do and all that I know and all that I teach and all the classes I participate in, that I would just know, right, Sharon? I would know that I am always going to be fed. I'm always going to be fed. And yet there are moments that I think I have to do it myself. And yet the universe is very proud to every now and then step up and say, can I just remind you, I'm actually doing the work. This is what I do. Don't you love people that say that to you? Let me do this for you. This is what I do. That's what God's doing. God is in your life saying, let me do that. This is what I do. Apparently what you do is worry. What you do is fret and fear. What you do is point out all the things that someone else didn't let me do. You point out all the things in the world that aren't working. I'm here to tell you, just get out of the way. And I will do it for you. And that's what it does. It feeds us daily. The question is, are you absolutely willing to let God cater your life? Are you willing to let God be that force in you that answers and takes care of every need you could possibly ever have? So at 1:30, I started writing this piece, and I just started. And I just wrote. And at around 2:30, 2:45, I had gotten to the end. And I sat there going, oh my God, this is just garbage. I did. I was like, it's not even funny. It's not even fluffy. I should have stuck with fluffy. Fluffy at least they'd laugh at. This is like, I felt like I had just written like No Exit, but without any of the funny. And I had said it's going to be like a Brechtian evening, and I was following through with it. So I wrote it, and then I just said, you know what? And I had tears in my eyes. I was like, I can't start over. I'm just going to, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? I turn it in, and everybody says, oh, yours was, Or yours didn't work. What's the worst that could happen? So I went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning, and I read it. Well, first I woke up and I had to do CPR. And then I read it. And then I had 2 seconds to get to the theater. So I didn't even have time for a rewrite. And for the first time ever, because I was doing CPR, I couldn't be at the table read when the actors read it for the first time. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not even there to keep them from talking about me. I'm like, oh my God, they must all be sitting there. Just as CPR was starting, I'm thinking, they're all at the table now going, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what he was writing. So I finished CPR, and I ran over to the theater, and I ran into this theater because we were doing ours on this stage, and I walked in, and they were all sitting on the stage. I think Alex had his head in his hands. And they were all just kind of sitting here, and I went, how are we doing? And like no one ever said to me, it's really good, we love it. They went, yeah, we're figuring it out. We're figuring it out. And in my head, I'm like, good luck, because I couldn't. So, and then they read it, and I was just blown away by what God wrote. And I was more blown away by the fact that what God wrote, I didn't see. I just wrote it and then judged the hell out of it for the few hours I was awake. And then they went to work on it. And I made some rewrites and changes, but I couldn't do a lot because I'm in here all day making sure every show is on the stage. And when they came, we opened the show last night, and when they came in and did the scene, I got to sit there and just watch it. And I was so blown away by what these actors did, by the faith that they took my words, they took God's words, and they just spoke them. And they trusted the brilliant director, and they just did it. And when we did the reading for the whole company, everybody's laughing at all the stuff that was in there. I'm like, okay, what's the lesson here? Well, the lesson here is what you need to talk about tomorrow morning, which is you need to let God do what God does and stop being so judgmental about it. Just do what is yours to do, and then stop trying to figure out, was it any good? It's God. It's good. Right? God is all there is. Good is all there is. Now, somebody may look at it and say, that didn't work for me, and it's like, oh, well. There are a lot of things that don't work for me. Doesn't mean they're not God. There are a lot of things that seem to fail. Doesn't mean it's not God. So that was my lesson yesterday. It's a question of faith. It really is. Are you willing to just let God do what God does? We already know what it is. It's love. The thing itself is love. How it works naturally. It works just like Irving Berlin said, doing what comes naturally. That's how it works. It's love, and love works naturally. Now, you have to be willing to let it do what it does. And that is be perfect in every situation. What if, no matter what happened in your life, you were able to honestly say to yourself, I'm sorry I haven't talked to any of you back here, say to yourself, my life is unfolding perfectly, and really mean it. Not because there's some fabulous little affirmation, but because you know the spiritual logic behind it, which is, my life is unfolding perfectly because God can only unfold perfectly. So let God do what it does, unfold perfectly, and then once it's doing what it's doing, just allow it to do it. And our job is, at that point, to get the monkey mind out of the way, to get all the judgment and all the fear and all the doubt and all the uncertainty out of the way, no matter what you're looking at. Ernest Holmes says, the Spirit can only give us what we can take. It imparts of itself only as we partake of its nature. And that's the next part of this. You know, what does it do? How does it do it? It does it naturally. Its nature is my nature. So it's you. Do you have the capacity to recognize your own nature? What if I would have had a much easier go of it if I just sat down and wrote and finished and said, oh, that was fun, and put it away and went to sleep and got up and wasn't worried about what anyone was going to think. Terry Cole Whitaker really did have it right. What other people think of me is none of my business. And when I make it my business, I stop knowing what I think of me. I need to know that what I think of me is what God thinks of me. And if I think as God thinks, I can never, ever say something about myself that is not absolutely spiritually true. Ernest Holmes says, we look too far away for reality. We look too far away for reality. So I wanted to ask you today, what's going on in your life that perhaps you're not 100% thrilled with? Can you think of anything? Just anything in your life, any little thing in your life that you are not 100% thrilled with. Any situation, relationship, doesn't matter what it is. Are you willing today to allow God to do what God does, get out of the way, and turn that thing over to the way it works, what it does, to the thing itself? Today could be an incredible day for you if you decide to let it be. Our teaching is two things, love and law. And that's the way it works. Love, that incredible spiritual energy that you are, and law of cause and effect. Whatever you decide to know, that's what you're going to create. If I know that my life is unfolding perfectly and cannot not unfold perfectly, that is what happens. And I love Tom Costa, Dr. Tom Costa's no matter what. I add it on everything. My life is unfolding perfectly no matter what, because that's where the almost comes into play. There are things that actually we decide have power. My life is unfolding perfectly, except right here, this is not exactly doing what I think it should do. Well, guess what? You're wrong. It's unfolding perfectly. And I don't care what you want to point at. It's unfolding perfectly. You gotta, and I love this, I just made this up this morning. You gotta let it be, and then you get to see. Let it be, get to see. If you're willing to let it be, then you get to see whatever God had in mind for you. Ernest Holmes says, we shall do well to look to the mind for the answer to all of our problems. We shall do well to look to the mind for the answer to all of our problems. That means all of our problems. I look to the mind for the answer to all of my problems. So, how much of this infinite good is ours? Ernest Holmes asks us. How much of this infinite good is ours? What do you think the answer he wrote? In big, bold letters. All of it. That was really wimpy. Let's say it again. All of it. So, how much is this? How much of the universe is mine to have? All of it. How much of my life is mine to live? All of it. How much of the richness of the universe is mine to play with? Okay, that's the spiritual truth. And you can look at the smallest pocketbook. You can look at the most anemic bank account and still know the spiritual truth about it. See, what happens is we get caught up in knowing that that's the truth or thinking that that's the truth. And it's not. And a lot of people say to me, well, how can I look at this and still know the truth? Oh my God, how can you not? And in fact, it's looking at this and thinking it's the truth that keeps me in that. So, how much of this infinite good is ours? All of it. And then he says, and how much of it may we have to use? How much of it are we going to use? And he says, as much of it as we can embody. As much of it as we can embody. So, I have this thing that I do. Yesterday I did this, and I was explaining to my children yesterday. Will woke up this morning, he said, could you just leave me at home today to sleep? And he says, you know why? Because Ernest Hemingway says, and he's 13, he says, because Ernest Hemingway says that sleep is very important. It's only when I'm awake that I screw things up. And I said to him, oh my God, I should reward you just for quoting Ernest Hemingway to me this morning. But I'm not. Get out of bed. So... But it was very interesting because Doug talked about it. Think about this. Ernest Hemingway wrote, sleep is very important. It's only when I'm awake that I screw things up. And yet what are we saying? Wake up! Be awake! Because what Ernest Hemingway was talking about was that in our daily lives, we tend to go to sleep. At night, we rest. We allow. We turn it over. So our job is to stay awake in the same atmosphere of when we are turning it over at night. Stay wildly awake, as Doug says. And I love, Doug's been blogging on CPR, and at the end of his things, he always says, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. I always have a vision of him going, okay. But that's our job, stay awake. Are you willing to stay awake? So, yesterday when I woke up, right before I came running over to the theater, I thought, I was talking on CPR, and one of the things I was saying, remember, today is the best day ever. You can make today the best day ever. I was like, I got off the phone and I went, I really need to try that today. I just asked 400 people to try it. I should try that today. So I decided, which is why I said it was all up to me yesterday. I decided that today, meaning yesterday, was going to be the best 24 hours of madness ever. Everybody's plays were going to be realized. Everybody was going to enjoy what they were doing, and they were going to be fulfilled. And I was going to be happy throughout the day. I was going to be enriched and happy and generous and making sure that everybody was taken care of, including myself. And guess what? That's exactly how the day unfolded. And Will said to me this morning, I was in the shower and he was in the bathroom trying again to see if I could let him stay home. He's outside the shower. He's like, Dad, I am really tired. And I heard myself saying, well, I had a lot less sleep and I'm wide awake, I'm full of energy, and so you're going to be full of energy too. He said, I don't think so. And I opened the door, I went, right now I want you to decide that you are going to be full of life today. You are going to be so excited. I'm naked right there. You're going to be so excited. You're going to be like, everything's going to be incredible today. Just decide that right now. And I could see in his eyes, he's probably upstairs sleeping right now. I could see in his eyes that he wasn't going to decide that. And then I was like, why am I trying to convince him to be me? Clearly, thank you, Sharon. Clearly, are you going to be in this chair all the time now? Oh my God, it's like my conscience right here. So I got it. I was like, oh my God, just let him. Let him be tired if he decides to be tired. Because guess what? He's deciding to be tired. He is. He probably knows that he wants to sleep. But that's not what I decided this morning. And Doug called me. I got out of the shower. I'm sitting there, and Doug called me and said, Doug was right there. Doug called me, and he said, you put the choir on the right and the band on the left. We have to flip it. And I felt myself, because I can be a little controlling. And I felt myself, I could feel it coming, and I didn't, did I, Doug? I just said, well, you know what? You guys figure it out. Just figure it out. I'm sure you're going to figure it out beautifully. And I hung up the phone. I was probably a little bit more controlling than that. But I eventually got there, didn't I? Thank you. So I get there. So about 10 minutes later, I'd already let it go. Doug calls me back and said, oh, no, we worked it out. You don't have to be upset anymore. I was like, I'm not. I let go of it 10 minutes ago. It's perfect. That's what we have the capacity to do. You have the capacity every day when you wake up to say, best day ever. Today, best day ever. And my children are my best teachers. And when we did best day ever, I gave a talk called Best Day Ever. Nora questioned me and said, how can you say that today, we had a really rough day, is the best day ever? And I said, well, and this is my answer. I said, because yesterday, let's just say yesterday, 2013, yesterday was the best January 19th, 2013 I've ever had. And she was like, oh, that is so not fair. I said, but it's true. This is your best day ever. This will be the best January 20th, 2013 you will ever have. Because guess what? You're never going to have another one. You're just going to have this one. This day, today, you get to decide. So, the question is, what are you going to order up for the rest of your day? What are you ordering, Liz, for the rest of your day? You can decide right now. And then it will unfold perfectly. You don't wait for it to unfold to decide whether it unfolded perfectly or not. See, we have to get that right. We have to get the order right. I decide, best day ever. And then I let God do the work. That's what it does. It does exactly what it's meant to do. I just have to get out of the way. I have to order my order and say, God, I will have the best January 20th ever in NoHo Art Center with the most amazing people surrounding me. It's just the best day ever. And no matter what comes my way, no matter what, say that, no matter what, my life is unfolding perfectly. I'm here to live it. I'm here to love it. I'm here to be it. And so it is. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Namaste.